right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Friends from Work, a podcast about all things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Multiverse, hosted by me, Kyle Sconowill, and my longtime friend from work, Robbie Earl. How are we doing, listeners? This is a perfect check-in time. How's everyone doing? Vibe check.
You know, I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for myself. But I can speak a bit for the masses today because I spent yesterday morning in a virtual queue waiting to even be able to select Deadpool and Wolverine tickets at Alamo, because the way this normally works is we get our screeners, but I always do like a backup opening night show just because you never know if there's a conflict or what will happen. And so I just went to go ahead and get them because it was the day they released. And I have not had to wait in any kind of line to get a Marvel movie ticket since, I think, Avengers Endgame.
I was going to ask you that. So first of all, I saw that it's breaking records, I believe, right? Most opening day sales or something. Don't quote me on that.
I haven't. I'll just say, as someone that goes to the movie quite a lot or goes to the movies quite a lot, I kind of thought that we just didn't have that functionality anymore. Like I just figured that there weren't, like, whatever the back end of these apps was, that we didn't have to wait in lines like that. And it was such a pleasant surprise for me to see that that's not the case. Because I remember waking up the morning that, like, I had to set an alarm when Infinity War tickets went on sale, because I knew that if I didn't get some within the first couple minutes, I wouldn't be able to get any decent seats for the first couple nights. And
here's what it was. Fandango reported that it was their largest first day pre-sales. Oh, just so far this year. But
okay, still. But yeah, I mean, man,
yeah, I saw people sharing that not only was the queue long, by the way, to your point, I saw people sharing Thursday night showings already, like minutes after, where the only seats were the front row or something already.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. It just gets me, it's kind of appropriate because today's episode is a bit of a throwback episode, and this feels like kind of a throwback moment. Like, it's hard to, like, between, again, I'm not going to keep talking about the comments from the studio, although there have been even more this week. If you want to keep up with this stuff, by the way, I would really recommend people go subscribe to our newsletter on Substack, because Greg does a really good job of collecting all that.
Not only does he do a great job, it's a way better format for you to actually read it than us listing all the quotes on a podcast.
Yeah.
But yep,
it's also better because
and I saw Ryan Reynolds ones. I saw Hugh Jackman, and then Brad Winderbaum is making headlines.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's nice because if you go there, you'll kind of see what we're commenting on without us giving all of the context. But just in general, it feels like, I don't know, like I think we've talked a lot about how Deadpool and Wolverine is the most, to me, has room to be like the biggest, most kind of seismic MCU film since No Way Home. But I think the big difference between this and No Way Home is that was the fourth film of the year when it came out, starting in July, which is crazy. Black Widow came out in July, and by the time we got No Way Home in December, we had 4 movies. I think now, obviously, it will have been close to a year by the time Deadpool and Wolverine comes out. I guess 9 months, and then we won't get another film until 2025. So there's that level. There's the fact that you're bringing back like such the old guard with Hugh Jackman, and just all of the work that Marvel seems to be doing kind of in the background of that. And then to see all of that culminate in a ticket queue of like I was like 103rd, and it was just, I don't know. It makes me happy.
Yeah, it
It's
should.
weird that I'm happy to be in a long line, but
Good point. I sent you one of the things that Ryan Reynolds said that I just love so much. He was doing an interview with Fandango, and he was talking about how one of the first days on set was just a filming of him and Logan kind of just walking down a road, like a street. And that was basically it. And he said he had tons of crew guys come up to him afterwards and say, that was the best day of my life. And he realized, like, just again, reiterating the intensity of the fandom and how cool that is. Like, okay, not only carrying the weight of that, but that this is actually really fun too. Like, we're making something that is going to not just make money, but millions of people are going to see, and there will be millions of people that will like live or die on it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's
metaphorically
just
speaking, it's metaphorical.
now that we're past X-Men 97, and which was such I did not expect that show to capture as much attention as it did. Like, I think when we first started talking about covering that, we thought it would be
for sure,
a couple of minutes at the top of each episode, and obviously it became a phenomenon.
And we were kind of debating if we even go week to week with it for a while.
Yeah.
So,
but now that that's behind us, it's like this is the next thing to really focus attention on, and it just has me thinking a lot about what could go right here. And I don't want to be the guy that's like on record saying this movie is going to be incredible, and then it comes out and has like 55%. But the reasons why I think it could be incredible are all kind of encapsulated in that comment that you were talking about from Reynolds, because I just think about our X-Men movie walkthrough, even till now, that we've been doing on Friends from Work Plus. Kevin Feige got his start, kind of cut his teeth on those original X-Men films. He's talked about that a good bit. And obviously, Hugh Jackman owes his career to that franchise. Ryan Reynolds has a really interesting role within that franchise, in that he starts off in maybe the worst X-Men movie, and then was able to reclaim it and make one of the most successful X-Men movies and R-rated movies ever. And so I say all that to say, everyone involved in this film, I think it's very personal to them. Like, it's not like the folks that are really driving it, I guess, seem to have a lot of investment in this being like the culmination of their X-Men career so far. And I think even Feige, I've seen him comment over and over again about how much he's an X-Men fan, which kind of makes sense when he came up, because the X-Men were like the superstars of the Marvel Comics lineup. And so it's like, to see him finally get the chance to do it, even just, not like the MCU version of the X-Men, but play with those characters within this universe that he's built, and then to be able to bring these guys in that care about it as much as he does. I just think that there's no chance that anyone's phoning it in. Like, it could be too ambitious, it could flop, but I love knowing that it's not because the people making it don't really care about what they're making. And that's encouraging.
No doubt. It feels really similar to me to Guardians 3 last year, doesn't it? Where, like, remember the discussion for us ahead of time was this movie might be a lot of things, but one thing we know is it's going to be quality. Like, there's not going to be, like, in a weird way, I kind of know what the Deadpool film is going to be. Yeah, all the people you're talking about behind the scenes caring and all that. Like, I'm not worried about it being bad. Not at all.
Yeah.
It might not be as much somebody's thing, or I don't know, or maybe like it doesn't tie into the MCU quite as well, but also it's going to be kind of irreverent to the MCU, and that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
My point is, I'm with you. The quality bar is already going to be high. If it gets 55%, I'm going to be shocked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I just think it's, in some ways, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but I think it's almost the culmination of Kevin Feige's career to date. because of the way he got his start. Like if Endgame was the culmination of the story he had been telling that started with Iron Man, in some ways this is like the culmination of his entire career in film. And I'm not saying that it's like the end or anything like that, but I think from his perspective, if I were him at least, like this would be something that means a lot to me and says a lot about the impact that I've had on Hollywood. And so I just don't think that that's going to be something that he is going to want to, especially when it's the only project he really has to put energy into this year. I don't think it's something that he's going to want to just casually drop. Like I think it's going to be something that he gives as much attention as he has.
I wanted to play that a lot earlier, but I couldn't find it.
Anyway.
Well, you and I are also pumped. Not just Kevin and not just Ryan and Hugh, but this is about to be my first time through, like, basically I think we've hit the threshold, which is that I can't remember Apocalypse on Friends from Work Plus. I've never seen New Mutants. I've never seen Dark Phoenix. And then on the main feed, I've never seen Deadpool 1 and 2. Anyways, I'm pumped. It's about to be all new for me until August 1, essentially.
Yeah, same, honestly. I've the Deadpool movies excluded. The rest of the X-Men films, I'm not really, like Apocalypse, I don't think I've seen all the way through. Same for definitely New Mutants, I haven't seen it all. And Dark Phoenix, I started and couldn't finish. But this time's going to be different.
You can do it. I believe in you. So here's what I kind of wanted today to be. So often, you and I record our podcast for an hour or so, and then we hit stop recording and we stay on this thing and we talk a little bit about business or something we got to figure out or whatever. But then a lot of times I'm going to lunch. Let's say we record at 10. It's now 11:30. I take our phone call to my car so I can start going to lunch. And we end up talking for like 30 more minutes about something in the MCU. Like, did you see this Iron Man clip or something, and then I don't know. Then just, we literally love talking about it so much that we even do it off air. And I want today to be a little bit of a throwback episode like that, where basically I'm going to give us a discussion starter that I know we've talked about in the past, but it's not a list. You don't have to have like rules. I have no notes. I just want to get us started and living in the MCU today. And I only have 2 rules for the rest of this episode. Okay. It's going to be a little bit strange. 1, no X-Men talk for the rest of this episode. This episode cannot include mutants, X-Men. We're not going to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine for today. We're going to be talking about like MCU Phase 4, where it was besides Deadpool and Wolverine. No X-Men mentioned, period. That's 1 rule. Rule 2,
fair.
The conversation cannot spin into any kind of negative critique. Like, we're not going to be talking about like what the fan reaction was to Quantumania or Jeff Loveness getting fired. It's not like that. I'm talking about in the MCU plot-wise, what are things that you are excited for them to follow up on? What are some threads that are out there that sound interesting? Who do you miss from like a Phase 4 or 5 perspective? Who could use another film? Yeah. That's the discussion I want to be living in. No X-Men, no negativity, all MCU.
I love it.
I don't even know if I have like a starter.
I do.
Okay, please, you start.
So again, I'm thinking very broadly, but you gave me a preview of what you wanted this episode to be like, and I was thinking about it last night. And for me, there are at least 4 characters specifically that I would like to follow up with. One of them, I think we've talked about a good bit, and so maybe we can kind of start there. But I am, especially as I've been playing through the most recent game again, I'm getting so excited to just see what the next step is with Spider-Man in the MCU. Like, I'm obviously really excited for the movie, but I'm also like, just because of how much No Way Home felt like the end of a saga, I'm just really curious to see what the next step looks like with that franchise.
No doubt. Probably my most anticipated thing. I think you're right. The game contributes to that. Across the Spider-Verse and how much I love that. I rewatched it last night. Is now playing into that. But also, as an example, Annika so badly wants like Zendaya and Ned to be in the next film. Although the end of No Way Home was kind of hinting that maybe that chapter's closed. So I'm just even fascinated to see, like, is it a total, not restart, but like, is it a older
like
Spider-Man?
A soft reboot.
Yeah, that doesn't even know Zendaya. Like, you don't see her at all in the movie. Ned's totally out of the picture. They're just at college, and he's now, whatever, 20, and living in New York and totally different? Or did they try to bring some of that cast along? I think I'm a little bit different than Annika, that I think it'd be really fun to just totally, soft reboot now. Like, we had the origin story, like new theme I'm okay with, kind of new tone, maybe different characters. Maybe this is where we introduce Norman Osborn. Like, just it's a less techie Spider-Man. Again, this is not an assault on any of the other stuff. I loved it. But now, they could go so many different directions with Spider-Man. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Daredevil with Spider-Man.
I know. I think I feel the same way. Especially with Fisk set to become mayor and play a larger role. Like, it seems like he's kind of getting leveled up for Born Again, which I think would put him more on a Spider-Man tier as well. Like, I think that there's going to be a discussion of this, I think, as well, in our newsletter this coming week. But I've been thinking about how they could, if they are adapting that Devil's Reign story that we talked about when we were covering the Echo finale, then there's, to allow Kingpin to kind of be a villain that's taking on the entire superhero community. There's a mechanism there where he kind of gets, like, he doesn't get powers, but he gets access to like other people's, like, he basically is given the ability to go toe to toe with heroes, which I think would be a good way of, like, making him someone Spider-Man couldn't easily dispose of.
Right. And he is a perfect villain for leveling up the adulthood of Spider-Man. Like, if it's Kingpin from Daredevil, I kind of want to see Spider-Man go through the same kind of trauma that Daredevil did in season 3. And then we'll see how quickly Spider-Man becomes adult. I don't mean like adult, like inappropriate. No. I just mean that he has to grow up because it's a very, like, dark villain. And it would be so fun to see Spider-Man feel that kind of pressure. Like you're saying, not only just physical powers, but that he can never actually get to Kingpin because Kingpin's got cronies over here. And every time he thinks he changes something, Kingpin changes it through the government. And now the police don't like Spider-Man because it's a law from Kingpin. Or, you know what I mean? Like, he just can't physically get to him. Would be
because I love the idea. Like, I wonder if Fisk, like, I don't know. I'm looking at Thunderbolts coming, at Captain America, at, like, Val's character that's kind of been hanging out there. And I'm wondering if, like, is Fisk going to somehow be linked in with what's going on at, like, the higher levels of government and kind of given even more power and more strings to pull because they kind of want the same things? And in that case, I love that idea. Like, physical powers aside, I think Ultimate Spider-Man, the original series with Bendis, did this so well. And I think that the game pulls from it in parts, but the opening Kingpin arc in the Ultimate Spider-Man series was basically meant to show it was taking Peter Parker through the first lesson of adulthood, sort of. I mean, he's still a teenager, but he's learning that, like, that isn't a thing that you can necessarily punch your way out of. Like, that when someone's so connected, like, even if you do go chase down Fisk and take him down and web him up outside the police station, like, you're just the criminal now. Like, you're the one that has done something wrong. He didn't do anything wrong, like, in the eyes of the law. And so it is this kind of, like, it's the Joker, like, with all your power thing. And so I do like it both from, like, the challenge it would pose to Spider-Man, but also the way that, like, if this is him moving into the next phase, not just like, oh, this is getting real, but also, like, I think that it would be a way to show him growing in a different direction, I guess. Like, it's not just growing, learning what responsibility is, which is kind of what we saw, or like learning what it is to like have to separate yourself from the people that you love, because we've seen that. But I think this
back
idea
to the
of
hidden
like,
identity thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's which is to say, I totally agree with you. I think that at some point we should return to Zendaya at least. And part of me feels like there's just no way that she doesn't show up in the movie just from like a
star power aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. But I hope that it would be kind of towards the end, like in the same way that Zendaya was like in Dune, but not really in Dune until part 2.
Or even if it's a hidden identity thing, like maybe you do see shots of her, like let's say working on like a journalism degree or something to start working for the Daily Bugle or something, but they don't know each other. Maybe. I think if you just kind of fall back in love, that's probably a mistake. Just because.
Well, but she's supposed to be in Boston, right?
Yeah. Eventually, yeah. I mean, she was still working at that shop, but yeah, the next school year they were going to go to MIT, right?
And that's my other question, is I just wonder how much, like, No Way Home was supposed to take place literally right after Far From Home, which took place right after the blip, or soon after the blip. So I think that it would be good for them to give, like, to give a little bit more time where it's like we meet up with Peter, like, in college. And maybe like a year or two has passed. And I just think it would be nice to, like, because Tom Holland has, from the time that Far From Home came out to now, like, has aged up some, like, not in a way that's like he looks old, but I think it would make sense to kind of let him leap forward a bit.
Oh, for sure. Hey Siri, how old is Tom Holland? 27 years old. So
yeah.
That's all, but he looks young, so that's almost perfect for sure that some time has passed. You're right. And I get more excited thinking about the soft reboot idea of like him with a camera around his neck and he's having to take pictures and he doesn't have much money, or like, I don't know, delivering pizzas. Not that much of a throwback, but yeah.
And I like that he, like, if we're looking at it from the original comics perspective, I think that what the John Watts series was always trying to do was capture the magic of those early, like, Spider-Man is in high school years that we didn't get much of at all in the Tobey franchise, and that we didn't get in the same way in the Garfield stuff. And I think that I mean, the trilogy did it so well. I mean, we brought in like Betty Brant and Ned Leeds, who were kind of old school Spider-Man characters that most people had never heard of, that didn't read those comics. And so I think that now, like, we've seen that cast, and now we can kind of move to like the Ramita era, like college cast, which like Mary Jane is part of, but also that's where you get like Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn. Like, that's when those characters are introduced, is like when Peter goes to college and now has like a whole new ecosystem. And I think that feels right. Like, I think that I would like to see Peter make new friends and maybe like date for a little bit. And
this is not as much your thing, but because I watched so much of Spidey and His Amazing Friends and then the Across the Spider-Verse films, I would be totally down to go that direction, which is like, maybe we do follow up on this young Miles that's around. And what if there was a Gwen Stacy who was a ghost spider? Because now we're in a universe where like multiple, like, okay, the Raimi Spider-Man's, the thing about it is he's the only Spider-Man. That's so cool. He's the only superhero. Right. But here we're getting closer to like mutants, and like there could be an explainable reason why. I just said mutants. I said I wasn't going to say that, but there could be an explainable reason to why Ghost Spider also exists. And I think that could be a really fun thing. Now, my only caveat with that is, what's such a bummer is if they ever did that, I feel like it has to be Haley Steinfeld, and she's already Kate.
Yeah.
Which I love her as Kate, but she wants to play a live action Gwen Stacy, Ghost Spider, and I think that she would be unbelievably perfect for that role, but she's already Kate. So that's my only disclaimer. But I think that'd be fun too. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, man, she would be great. I mean, that would be
but I know that's
so
way more
doable
modern.
in like a Secret Wars context, though. Like, I don't think it should be something that she does necessarily like as a full thing, but it would be fun. Like even in the way that we got like the Donald Glover shout out in Spider-Verse. I am just such a like, I'm not a Spider-Verse guy conceptually.
I know. That's what I said.
I
said, I know it's not your thing. I know it's not your thing. I said that. I know.
Kind of antithetical to the character. But I will also say,
I get it.
I would be much more comfortable with that, especially the Miles side, as I want to see them do full on what we saw them do in Into the Spider-Verse, which is like adapt the actual introduction of Miles, where we see a Peter Parker like die and pass on the torch. Like, I think that it's this thing where it's like the character has to, like, I think what made the introduction of Miles so powerful originally was he felt the weight of carrying on the legacy of Peter. Like, Peter was this like fairly young person in the comics. He's still, I think, high school age, and dies. And Miles feels like, oh my gosh, like this kid was doing all these things to save people, and now I have the same powers and I have to kind of do the same thing. And I think that that's when it gets, I mean, that's what makes that scene in Into the Spider-Verse so powerful. And that whole movie is kind of built around that moment to some degree. And it's like, that's where, like, I love the way the video games have done it. Like, I think that they've done a good job of dealing with like a world where Peter and Miles both exist. But even there, like at the end of the second game, I feel like they're recognizing that you kind of need to have one or the other more at the forefront for the mythology to function at its like peak levels. So I would be fine with bringing in Miles.
I agree with you.
But I just think it should be at the end of Holland's era.
Okay, I'm going to transition us off Spider-Man after a quick word from these sponsors. We have breaking news from our friends over at nerdriot.shop. Right now, for a limited time until May 28th, they are running a special Memorial Day sale, where if you buy an item on nerdriot.shop's website, you can get any other item, a second item, for 50% off. No discount code needed. The discount will be applied automatically when you check out. So again, buy one item. It could be an item like this shirt, the Mobius shirt, or buy an item like the X-Men 97 inspired Gambit Remember It shirt. If you buy one of those, you can choose any other item on their website for 50% off until May 28th. So now is a perfect time to get you some Star Wars merchandise, some X-Men 97 merchandise. They still have some cool Loki stuff, all kinds of Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff. And then if you're getting ready for the summer and want to be prepared for Deadpool and Wolverine, check out Nerd Riot's run of Wolverine and Deadpool stuff. Any kind of cool nerd merchandise, nerdriot.shop is for you. Again, the Memorial Day buy one, get one 50% off sale runs until May 28th. Check out nerdriot.shop. Link in these show notes. So I have a few random scattershot thoughts here when I was thinking about this episode and preparing for it. One of the things I found interesting, Robbie, is I started going through the projects and I found a trend, I thought, which is that a lot of the projects feel like in some ways these last couple years, they wrapped up. Like you could never do this other entry again and you would be okay. And then in a lot of ways, there are still threads dangling in each individual one. It's kind of like they left it in a good spot where if you want to pick it up, go ahead. But if not, fans would be okay with that. And I think one of the positives of this last phase feeling very scattershot, like you get a Miss Marvel and then you get a Shang-Chi and like they're not interacting at all and Captain Marvel's out there and blah, blah, blah. The positives of that is that I think you can do that. And as a fan, I don't think you're necessarily asking yourself, like, what is Moon Knight doing right now? because I don't feel like when you're watching a Miss Marvel show, you think to yourself, man, she really could use Moon Knight's help. Like you used to think, like during the Iron Man 3 era.
Oh, yeah.
Like Iron Man 3 is when I was kind of like, okay, the president's under attack. All this is wrong. Why are we not calling Steve Rogers? The only reason we're not calling him is for budget and because it's an Iron Man 3 film. That's how I felt at the time. Here, because it's so separated, I think you can do these projects and not think to yourself like, man, Thor should have been there. It's like, well, he's doing his own thing. Like they're in different universes sometimes. Like it's all just kind of scattered. But I was kind of going through it. I'm like, well, you know, I think it'd be really fun to get another entry of Thor and him showing up. But if that was the end, that you know he's kind of just out protecting people who are underprivileged and abused with his daughter, that'd be fine. Like that could be the end of it. I think Ant-Man 3, like the way they ended Ant-Man with, he basically won in the quantum realm, but there's this thought of like, well, if you want to pick up on the Kang thing and what he was referencing, then that's trouble.
Yeah.
You pick up on Guardians 3, like for the most part, that's kind of done, but you did leave this thread of, well, there is a team out there and Peter Quill's on Earth. Like that's something I'd be curious to see now that he's on Earth. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting you started going through that. There was a lot of projects that were kind of wrapped almost.
Yeah.
Same with Spider-Man, to be honest. Like if it wasn't Spider-Man, like we want more Spider-Man, obviously. I want all these characters more, but I'm saying like if it wasn't Spider-Man, that was basically the end of his story, essentially.
Yeah. I think that is, I mean, in some ways it feels like the way certain things were wrapped early in the Infinity Saga, like, you know, Iron Man 3 could have been the end of that character, like based on kind of what it was. It felt like that in some ways. And that then gave them room to do whatever they wanted to do with the character moving forward and take it all the way to Endgame. Yeah, I did think about, as I was thinking about threads I want to follow up on, as someone that has never been like the biggest Guardians guy within the MCU, I do find myself wanting to return to Peter Quill on Earth, just because it is kind of an interesting new status quo. And I even noticed this the last time I was watching Love and Thunder. Like I really do like Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. Like it's a character that I think is made for him. He comes alive as an actor with that character in ways that I don't think he always does in other like random action movies he's in. And so
he's great.
I would like that. It would make it feel very like classic MCU to me to get a new take on Star-Lord, I think. I
also wonder what their plan is with Moon Knight, because I loved it so much. I think it's fair to say I liked it more than you. I would love a follow-up there, but I also understand how you could get away with not following up there. I mean, you could basically be like, he's fighting this spiritual war. He's not interested in being like a superhero helper, but it would be a little bit strange if we never even got a reference to his existence kind of thing. So I'd love to see more there.
Is your sense that series ends with him even being Moon Knight though? Like I thought the cliffhanger was like, oh, Jake is involved, but other than Jake, aren't they under the impression that they're no longer serving Khonshu?
Yeah. So does that mean he doesn't have any of those powers then if he's not serving Khonshu?
I mean, I think he does. Maybe he just doesn't, or they don't know, I should say, that they still have them. Because I mean, if Khonshu's still kind of empowering Jake to be his guy.
Yeah.
My point being
again, but that's another perfect example of
exactly.
You could just never pick it up again and you'd be like, that was a satisfying story. He went through all that. He doesn't have those Khonshu powers. He's still multiple personalities, or they are. And here's another one. Doctor Strange and Wanda. Like on one hand, if you wanted to say that was the end of Doctor Strange, like he's now just at peace with his current life and Wanda's actually dead and she sacrificed herself for the greater good, that could just be the end of it. And that was not much to follow up on. However, you could take a totally different direction. You could be like, she actually survived. That was her just, that explosion was her just bursting out of the rocks. And Doctor Strange is now trying to figure out what's happening with the multiverse stuff. And maybe Doctor Strange helps lead the charge in the incursions and the secret invasion stuff. And he's now like the new Tony Stark and has to recruit Wanda after all this to help or whatever. So there's other ways you can go with it now.
No, I think that Wanda, I think is a character that they could definitely leave. I don't think that they will. But
it's kind of like Zendaya,
that,
where I don't think they will leave it.
Especially with an Agatha show coming, I think that they're going to want to keep that possibility alive to drive interest in that. But Doctor Strange, I think because of the way they have introduced the idea of incursions in that like series or franchise, and then ending it with Charlize Theron, I think that we're going to need a legitimate follow-up there. And I was watching Fury Road the other day with Candace, getting ready for Furiosa coming out soon. And
do you have a screener for that?
I got invited to some press event, but I don't think it was a screener. And I may have missed it. Do you have one?
I don't think so for some reason. I would have gone.
Yeah,
but
I think
on like the email I get, it says like
so
no screener or links planned. And I was like, why not?
Oh, interesting.
It's apparently getting unbelievable reviews. Side note.
Man, I'm so excited. And I'm so excited for Chris Hemsworth in that movie because it just looks like...
to bring this full circle then, we were talking about all the quotes coming out. Well, obviously Chris Hemsworth was making headlines with the promo for this. But also now, I think it's George Miller who directed this. Yeah. He's now saying like he was defending Chris, defending the MCU, and saying he would be interested in directing Chris in quote anything. So now there's like a little bit of a movement for George Miller to do the next Thor film because he was like so effusive in his praise of what Chris Hemsworth could pull off.
Oh man,
that led to the discussion of would he ever do the next superhero film, and he was kind of like, yeah, I would. I'm not against it. So that was interesting.
He's got such a great eye for just like massive action set pieces. Like I think that he would be, and because of the kind of like melodrama of the whole Mad Max franchise, I think that like he would be well suited to tell a Thor story because it's all kind of steeped in this mythology, and like the kind of lone warrior thing.
I know that's random.
Oh, that would be fun.
But no. Totally random.
But as I was watching Fury Road, I mean, Charlize Theron is obviously, that's one of my favorite movies of hers.
Yeah, maybe her best.
Yeah, I mean, what was the other movie? Candace would say Monster,
she's even in it more than
movie.
She's in it more than Tom
Hardy. Yeah. But I was just thinking, I was not a fan. We've talked about that of the post-credit scene of Multiverse of Madness featuring her. I kind of felt like the bigger issue there was that is like talking again about how I don't think any part of Deadpool and Wolverine will be phoned in. That was something that felt phoned in to me, where it was like, okay, we need something just out there to kind of keep people hooked.
Yeah, careful not to break rule number 1 and be negative, or rule number 2. I already broke 1. You broke 2 now, a little bit.
That's
but yes,
fair.
keep
That's
going.
fair.
Keep going.
But I'm just saying, recognizing that, I do think. I remember her saying she was really excited to be cast and that she enjoyed going and watching all the MCU movies to get ready for it. And, just reminded she's really great. Like she's just a really great actor. And I would like to see her like fully live in this role. I think the Clea role is really interesting as it like that is kind of a, Doctor Strange has been married to her in the comics on and off. And so for Multiverse of Madness to be so much about him kind of getting some peace about he and Christine's relationship, I think that this is a good time. Not that he needs like a whole new love interest, but like to again change the dynamic. So I think I'm excited to see them together. I'm excited to follow up with Strange from like a character perspective, because I really have liked tracing his arc across his first 2 films. But I'm also like, I think that, to your point, he could be a really helpful anchor.
Yes.
As we get into the real meat of the multiverse stuff, because like, we need someone that can explain to people what's going on and explain to us what's
some
going
knowledge
on.
of it. Yep. Okay, that is so perfect you said that, because my final point, and really this is the point that inspired this episode, I'm going to say something blasphemous and then it's going to all tie together. This is kind of blasphemous. You and I, for so long during the Infinity Saga, said over and over again that we don't want the MCU to reverse deaths or consequences. Let people sit in things. Don't bring characters back. Even to the extent that last week during our, and I can't say the word, but during our episode last week, I cut you off about GAMBIT becoming, I can't say it because I'm breaking the rule. And I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have cut you off. I was cutting you off because I was a little bit rolling my eyes at like, okay, come on, we're going to bring someone back already. But I feel bad because I feel like you could have gotten into something cool there. So I apologize for that. But my point is, my gut is always like, don't take your most memorable deaths or consequence moments and then just belittle them. So I am so far in that camp, it's hard to explain. Yeah. But you and I had this conversation on the phone where I just admitted to you, like, I've always been that way. But because it's been so long since like Cap and Tony were the MCU, like when we say MCU, we really meant Cap and Tony, like, that saga. Yeah. It's been so long since like the Civil War days, but especially like since that last dialogue with Thanos at Endgame, that, I'm not going to say with Cap and Tony yet, if they should come back. But since that era, that I think I'm slightly, and this is the blasphemous statement, reversing my thoughts on Vision. I love Vision so much. I love Vision when he represents an Age of Ultron. I love that like Thor is almost scared of Vision's power. Thor. I love that Vision kind of represents the functional Avengers, if you will, like the voice of reason. I love how he was created, that he was created actually kind of not out of the voice of reason, but became that instead of becoming Ultron. I love everything about the way Paul Bettany plays it. I love how they write the character with all his famous quotable things. And then you carry that over to what he did in WandaVision, which just for me was so powerful. Like that is still my show. That's it. That's my thing. And their love story and how much I love Wanda is like such a driver for me now, to the point where it's one of the only drivers that moves me as much emotionally as some of the stuff in the Infinity Saga. Like if I had to, for my personal sake, say like what could get me as emotionally invested, that is still the thing that could do it, because of their chemistry, because of the characters. Like, yeah. And then on top of that, to bring it all back, I just think it would be really cool in a time now where we don't have like anyone leading an Avengers team. We don't have too many overpowered characters or anything like that. And because we never really fully got a ton of time with super powered Vision, he's immediately taken off the board in Infinity War. It's really just half of Ultron, because he is not even born until the back half of the film. I think that there could be a really explainable way that I would now reverse that quote unquote death. And I'm going against what I would normally say, and say like, there's a way that when Vision passed his memories on to White Vision, and then White Vision says, I need to go, explore what this means, that he now has found himself and is Vision, the Vision we know, that he comes back looking like Vision and has evolved, I guess, into that version of Vision. I don't know if Wanda needs to then fall back in love with him. Maybe it's a slow play thing. Like maybe she slowly starts falling in love with him again. Like he wins her over, but just Vision is back as Vision, and he can help with Doctor Strange spearhead the incursion side of this, because I feel like you could get so many cool quotable lines from him, like wise lines from him about what's going on. And like, if he has the memories of where he's been, I could be fully bought back in. And I think you need a little bit of some centering characters for what's upcoming. So if it's like Vision, Doctor Strange, Wanda, who's not dead, and or maybe Wanda's like the wild card that they call in when they need the extra strength or something, and then like Reed Richards or something to center us for what the multiverse era is going to be. I just think he could be a huge benefit, and we didn't get a lot of him. So I'm kind of changing my mind on that.
I think that is totally fair, especially for a character like Vision. Like I think that it's character specific for me, both in terms of what we've gotten from those characters story wise, but also the nature of the character. Like I think that I don't want to see Tony resurrected, like period, for sure. Now, would I be okay with?
Okay, if he's a cameo from a multiversal Tony, is that okay or not?
Yeah, no, I think I'm okay with that because, I can see a world where we are, like there's a world where Secret Wars is the No Way Home of every major Marvel live action franchise. So like we would almost have to get like a version of Tony and Steve Rogers in that for it to have the like full on payoff. Like you would kind of like, I think that if they want to go big, they're going to need to have a scene where RDJ is interacting with Tobey Maguire and Hugh Jackman.
Oh my God. Like, okay. Oh my gosh. But there is no scenario, zero, where there is a new Iron Man in the sacred timeline, and B, that it is at all Robert Downey Jr. I think that is a huge loss if at the end of the film or something, you're trying to bring him back. But yes, like, to your point, he's interacting or something and he gets one look at Spider-Man, like MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And MCU Spider-Man's like, dang, man. Or so, and then the portal closes or something. It's like, okay.
And that's I'm okay with them doing what some people kind of said was happening in No Way Home, depending on what your headcanon in, which was like headcanon is, which was, it's like not totally, the same character. It's just almost in every way the same character from the Sam Raimi trilogy. But if there are any like, plot holes, like that's kind of how you paper over it. I would almost be okay with like, it's a Tony that's been like plucked out, maybe not even from an alternate universe. Like maybe it's like a Tony that's plucked out from like the Civil War era or something, but then he's going to be like put back in the time stream and has no memory of it. Like that's something that Avengers have done in their comics before, had kind of like a greatest hits moment where they pull Avengers from like the high points of the team across its whole history to fight some like actually against Kang, to fight like a big Kang battle. And then once the battle's won, they like send them back and they have no memory of having joined. Like I would be okay with that. And that way you kind of get this is our Tony, but it's like not really touching his ending.
Right.
But yeah,
but back to Vision. That's different
so
for
my
you?
point in all that being like I would even be okay with Steve coming back in some capacity since he didn't actually die. I don't know that I want his character.
Have you heard the rumor?
No.
There's like a tiny rumor that maybe they're developing a show about him putting the Infinity Stones back. A Disney Plus show.
I mean, that would be...
Don't know how you feel about that.
I would enjoy that. Okay. Like, if it's done well, obviously, but like I think that they would have to have there would just have to be there would have to be stakes there. I mean, because we know that he did and that he wound up at peace. So you would have to introduce some level of mystery so it doesn't just feel like it's all like peripheral. But I think that the longer we get away from them, this is my gut, is that Robert Downey Jr. is the Steve Carell of this, where I think he is so proud of it, but has no interest in returning. But there might be, like you said, just like Carell in the finale, there might be a cameo, like a tiny cameo. If he's in it, he's willing to do that. But I think the further he gets away from it, he's okay with being done with it. I have this feeling that Chris Evans is the exact opposite, which is like the further we get away from it, I have this feeling that he's more and more interested in the idea of some way to pull it off. His dialogue is slightly shifted
from like, no, this is the end, to like, well, it'd have to be really perfect. You know, it's just like, it's kind of changing a little bit. And I think if he doesn't like go on to do an Oppenheimer, like Knives Out, but like if he doesn't have like that kind of like, you know, banger after banger after banger, I think he's even more open to the idea. If like the circumstances are right. That's a theory. That's speculation.
Well, you also have to look at it from the perspective of like the stage of their careers. Like I just checked, Robert Downey Jr. is
exactly
almost 60 and Chris Evans is 42. You know, it's 100, like,
that's the other thing. I didn't even say that. Like, because also if you're going to do any kind of like plucking Robert Downey Jr. out of the timeline kind of thing, he's already looking a lot older. I don't mean that in a weird way, but like in Oppenheimer, they leaned into him being like 70 kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and he's still like, he looks great for someone that's
100%,
like almost 60. But yeah, he doesn't look like you could drop him back in to anywhere within the Infinity Saga. Whereas Chris Evans is still kind of in the mode where, you know, like he looks about as he did, at least once we got past like the first, like phase 1. So my only thing there is like, and it's been done so many times, like Captain America, Steve Rogers as Captain America has like died or been taken to another dimension or given up the shield like so many times through the history that like there are countless ways if they wanted to bring him back into the fold that they could, and it could be really powerful. I think my fear, I would just want them to have new ground to cover once they bring him back. Like if they were to bring him back and then not really have anything to do. Yeah. It's like, well, then this was really just for and in that case, it's maybe just better to have him do the same thing in Secret Wars.
Good point.
But I don't know, maybe if they are doing a series like that, where he's going and putting the Infinity Stones in, like maybe that actually is like a really cool piece of connective tissue between the Infinity Saga and the Multiverse Saga. If like Steve had some kind of experience while he was doing that actually like gave him some insight into what's going on in the multiverse. Like maybe he somehow became part of like an incursion event or something like that, or witnesses one or hears about one. And I don't know, like there are things to do there, I guess. I would want them to make it worth it.
I think it for sure becomes a question of, is it additive or not? You're right. Like with Black Widow, when you went back, I thought it was very additive. I think it informs the character. I think it ties some movies together really well. You know, we've already seen that he got to live his amazing life with his wife and they're kissing at the end. It's beautiful music and they finally get their dance. And then we see old him and we know there is a huge gap. He lived a life there, you know, for sure. Mm-hmm. But whatever story you tell, is it adding to that moment? Like, am I going to leave with an even more informed, fun version of Steve Rogers, or is it just going to be like, oh, that was a tale? That's my question there. I still want to hear what you got to say about Vision, though, because I keep interrupting you.
Yeah. Well, no. And this, I guess my closing thought there, I think Vision is a character that, like, both of those criteria that I listed, like the story that we've gotten of him so far and also just the nature of the character, I think make him kind of a perfect candidate for bringing him back, which is why I think WandaVision was able to do it so easily. I think first, to your point, we have the only time that we've ever seen Vision operating at full power is the end of Age of Ultron, because Civil War, he's intentionally holding back because he's not trying to hurt anybody.
Right.
And most of that movie is more about the beginning of his relationship with Wanda.
Right.
And then Infinity War, he's immediately off the board. And that movie's basically just about him and his relationship with Wanda. So I feel like I would love to see Vision come back and be the like heavy hitter that he was kind of introduced as at the end of Age of Ultron.
Like the dialogue in the last scene of Age of Ultron, you know, like, and then if Ultron attacks him, I can just immediately dispatch you with this giant laser blast. Like, no problem. Right. But I'm still going to talk to you and try to reason with you first. Kind of thing. Like, that's the Vision I love. Please.
Well, and it's a very like Superman thing, which I think like I like. Like I think that the thing that makes the Superman character either interesting or not interesting, like everyone always says like, oh, there's nothing interesting about that character because he's invincible. That's only true if you don't make that work for you. Like I think that the adaptations or the comics that are really great about Superman, they recognize that he is virtually invincible and that almost nobody can beat him. But the fact that he then kind of has that like Captain America thing in him that makes him want to do anything but hurt people, like is what creates the interesting tension there. Well, and I think that Vision represents that too.
Well, and we've seen that Vision is not totally invincible, which I think is enough for me. And I love the power levels of it where Thanos's minions know, like, we got to take this guy off the board, which so it makes sense. Everything makes sense with his character so far. Like everything about it, including WandaVision, is a perfect arc. But I just think there's more meat in the bone. That's my point. There's more meat in the bone there that we didn't get to see that he could be so pivotal in this upcoming incursion thing. And again, the way he speaks to Wanda, the way he speaks to Ultron, all of that, I could use that in like a council form. And I just think it'd be really cool.
It would be, well, he would honestly be, I think, I mean, they already foreshadowed him having some multiversal knowledge in Multiverse of Madness, you know, whenever she's like, Viz had his theories.
Yeah.
So like,
I'm even just dying for like a little look, you know, like Vision's on the council and he says something. He's like, you know, like that, what happened last time. And then Wanda and him meet eyes. It's kind of like this. Yeah, I know. You know, something like that. That's all I need. That's all I need.
No, I do like, well, and there are just more interesting things to explore there with the character. Like I was saying, we've really only, like, there have been two main beats, like Vision as the kind of child of Ultron and Vision as like the person that's in love with Wanda. And I think that there's a lot more to a character like that. Like he's artificial intelligence. He is like, has a body that seems like it would be virtually indestructible because he's made of vibranium. So I think it makes sense that a character like that would be able to heal and recover. And I think that like there's just a lot of interesting work to be done looking at what it looks like for him to recover his psyche. Like if he is, like we got that great exchange at the end of WandaVision, like what will I be next? And it's like this idea that he is,
he even
like,
hints at it kind of, that it could come back.
Like he started as like a, you know, bodiless, just AI. And then he became this like Ultron alternative. And now it's like he's kind of human, he's died and come back. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, what is he still, like, if he has his memories, does that make him the same person?
Oh, I love
or
it. Let's
not?
wrestle with
like
it.
This is all stuff that would be so interesting, I think.
Yeah, let's wrestle with it.
Yeah.
And WandaVision gave us a glimpse of that. Right. Yes. I'm fine with that. I request elaboration. All of that. I'm into it. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I'm with you. More Vision.
We're pushing an hour here. My camera is giving me an overheating warning. So if I lose camera, we can finish this episode in darkness, but know that I think we should wrap it here pretty soon. Yeah. I am aware of the fact that there are tons of other ones out there, just like off the top of my head. Like I think Shang-Chi needs a second film. I think Shang-Chi could be a great, he could fulfill the role of like the naive superhero who actually has a lot of strength, but like is kind of fun amongst the other superheroes. Like he could fill a really cool role where he's the new guy on the team. And like the way that post-credit sequence leaned into that and they go to karaoke instead, like that's the vibe that I think he could totally embody amongst the Avengers, which would be so sick. So I need a follow-up there. We already talked about Moon Knight. We already talked about Star-Lord on Earth. We talked about WandaVision. What am I missing? There were others.
I mean,
but like Miss Marvel.
We will talk about.
We'll get way more Miss Marvel, but I'm fine with her operating on the level she's operating on. Like she doesn't need to be involved in this side of it. Like a Young Avengers team.
More Kate is coming.
Yeah,
apparently.
More Kate, but that could be like its own separate team. Again, like Kate doesn't fit in my opinion in like the Secret Wars battle. Like I don't need to see Kate against Vision or something. Like that's not the point. But like a different team there, you know. And there's rumor there might be a second Hawkeye show that is following.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think, and I I mean, we'll talk more about Shang-Chi soon because we're rewatching that. But I've been listening a lot to the Wakanda Forever score, which is so good. And so I've just been thinking a lot about Namor, and
Namor.
I do think that's one of the more interesting character introductions, and I would like to see where that's heading. Like, I feel like we need to follow up on that in the somewhat near future, because that was just a massive introduction of like a whole underwater, super powerful kingdom. So
right, yeah, that's a good one too. And then we don't have time, but then Eternals is the other big matzo ball hanging out there, which is that they haven't followed up at all. Honestly, the other one, which people don't like, is they haven't followed up at all on Secret Invasion and what happened at the end of that, and then kind of just like basically pretending like Skrulls don't exist at all and Earth is fine in the Marvels. So they may be wiping that from their memory. But I do wonder, and I've been thinking about this a ton, again, keep this short, but we were talking on Friends from Work Plus about Logan and how it exists in the timeline.
Yeah.
And then you and I were talking off air about Eternals and how that fits and if they're going to make a second Eternals. And I do wonder, because of the multiversal era right now, while it's open, you have some unique opportunities to get away with some stuff that you wouldn't have gotten away with. Like, for example, I'm not saying this is what they should do, but there's a chance that you could come out and say Eternals took place in a different universe that was very, very similar to the one we know. Like it has a Tony and a Cap to reference, but you didn't see a lot of other markers, and it's like it's adjacent to it. And then you could get out of it, scot-free somehow. Get out jail free card.
Yeah.
Or you make a follow-up film that addresses Tiamat. Maybe it's Brave New World. You know, the damage there, the wreckage there. You know what I'm saying? Like there are still opportunities while this window's open.
Yeah.
If Secret Wars ends with it going back to one timeline, you're going to be kind of not stuck, but you're going to be stuck with what you have, I guess.
Well, and I think that's the perfect place to end this. I was thinking the same exact thing. That's funny about Eternals last night, where if there is anything they feel like they kind of got in too deep on, whether or not you say, oh, that was in another universe, you know, what Secret Wars was doing, the comic event that the Marvel comic universe never really took full advantage of, was definitively ending every universe. Like it was supposed to be like every timeline ends, and then what you see happen is like a cobbling together and then like a recreation of certain universes. Like that series kind of ends with the Fantastic Four out going into like exploratory mode, and they're going to try to like recover universes and recreate them, the things that have been lost to incursions. I wonder, just given that, you know, we've always said the MCU has the ability to do what comics can't, which is like kill off characters, have endings, like really let things not be perpetually ongoing. Like, I'm wondering if there's a world where they actually let certain things just end and we come out with like a recreated version of like the sacred timeline, but maybe like not like, you know, the parameters are very narrowly drawn now. Like if they want to kind of cut down on some of the sprawl of Phase 4. Well,
you said this to me. Secret Wars, it's all these different universes coming together and acknowledging that if we don't come up with one universe, they're all going to end, right? Like there's a little bit of this.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, because I had never thought of it this way, but what you have the unique ability to do now with Fantastic Four is if Fantastic Four is set in a different universe, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're getting to a point where if you say Eternals is in a different universe, you're starting to get representation from all these different universes to where you have like the Avengers in ours, and you have the Fantastic Four in theirs, and you have the Eternals in theirs, and you could go on and on. There are all these mini teams who, the Foxverse, like maybe Deadpool and Logan, that's theirs. And then all of a sudden, if there's ever a scene where they're all sitting around conversing, like a Council of Kangs vibe, but it's an Illuminati thing or something. And there's a representative from each one. So you have one Eternal, and you have Doctor Strange from Mars, and you have, yada, yada, yada from each one. And they all want what's best for the universe as a whole, but they all deep down feel a little bit of loyalty to theirs. I think that could be interesting and a good way to kind of get out of jail free with the Eternals, which is like, so they want what's best for humanity, but they're a little bit partial to the one that they're actually on, that planet. And so their interaction with Doctor Strange is interesting because he's like, I get all this stuff and I know this too, but he kind of wants like Christine, the Christine he knows, to be okay. So my point is, you could set it up to where it all made sense in hindsight. It all worked. They all have their own individual motivations. And then, like you said, there's a new recreation of one final one 5 years from now that doesn't deal with this anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because also like that would, I mean, I think the biggest thing that Eternals has to deal with is not just Tiamat, but also the existence of the Celestials, period. Like that's such a massive like reframing of the entire fictional universe there. Like, oh, there are these space gods that created every planet in the universe. And like,
I think that more than the actual Eternals for me is what throws me off.
Yeah. That's a good point. It would, if they would just have to, I mean, like, luckily there were no real guest appearances in Eternals. They talk about Thanos. You're right. They talk about like Cap and Tony. But it would also be, if the universe ends and they restart it, then that would also technically like alter that framework, right? Like if there's some other way that the universe is reborn that doesn't involve the Celestials, they also kind of get rid of that baggage.
Good point. And you know this, the easiest cop-out would be, there are other universes where Thanos snapped, right? And there are other Caps and Tonys that are very similar, and they just didn't do this one thing, like TVA says. Okay, anyways.
Yeah. No, this
has been really good. I had a couple 4-minute rants because I get real excited thinking about this side of it.
I know. Much to consider.
Thank you all for listening. I would love to legitimately hear your thoughts. What are some things that you're looking forward to? What are some aspects of the MCU that you miss right now that you think would be really fun to follow up on? Hit us up on Discord's a great place to do that. We try to be pretty active on there. You can find our Discord channel by going to the ffwpodcast.com. On there is a ton of stuff, merch, our rankings, our rewatch, if you're just getting into the MCU, etc. But there are links on there, including to a contact form and to Discord. We are so grateful for all of you who listen to this podcast, who subscribe to this podcast, who leave a review of this podcast on Apple or Spotify. We love you all. This has been a really fun, just MCU refresher for me. So thank you for letting us get that side conversation out. And we're going to be kicking up the rewatch journey again pretty soon here. And we have one other kind of X-Men high-level episode we want to do at some point here on the main feed. Once we kind of get through more of those films on Friends from Work Plus. If you're into that idea, if you're into the X-Men, if you want to do the rewatch journey with us, you can do that. But you can also subscribe to Friends from Work Plus. It's one of the best ways to support this podcast and get all of those episodes as we're going through all of the old Foxverse movies before our massive Deadpool month of July, essentially. July is Deadpool month. Thank you for listening. We love you. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. We'll see you next time right here on Friends from Work.